Mr. Mayor, thank you for coming all the way from Buffalo this morning after some exciting news yesterday, so thank you for making the trip.
Great to be here, JJ.
So I thought we might start in Buffalo, but before we do that, is there any news from behind the stage? I know you guys were talking about your basketball skills, and Arn, you were talking about maybe bringing him on board.
We need more three-point shooting. I think he fits the bill.
I was talking about multitasking. I don't have on my sneakers today, but I have been known to drain a three-pointer or catch a TD with these shoes on.
And not to be left out, we're talking a little basketball, but the Bills are 2-0 as well.
The Bills are 2-0.
So, Mr. Mayor, I think we should jump right in. There was a major press conference yesterday about the Skyway, and we talked a little bit about the park. There's a lot going on in the city of Buffalo, a tremendous amount of momentum, and I just want to hear a little bit about your thoughts about what this means to the citizens of Buffalo across the city.
Well, Buffalo is going through a real renaissance right now, as you indicated, tremendous momentum. We are working hard every single day to keep that momentum going. All of our public policy really flows through a focus on embracing our diversity and focusing on being inclusive and equitable in everything that we do in our community. We, like many cities across the country, face some public health challenges with our youth. So childhood obesity, gun violence. We're very fortunate to have a very active, collaborative police athletic league that works with our network of community centers, our Division of Youth, and our Parks Department to make sure that young people are exposed to sports and recreational activities. So being able to be here at the Aspen Institute Project Play Summit, certainly very important to us because we want to focus on all of those things that we can do to keep our youth active, to keep our youth engaged in sports and recreation, because we know that when youth are active, when youth are involved in sports and recreation, there is higher educational attainment, children do better in school, quality of life in communities go up, and neighborhoods are stabilized.
The work that you all are doing in the city of Buffalo is truly amazing, and it's, we see the stuff that's happening on the waterfront, but it really is across the city, and I've had a chance to tour with some of your staff. What challenges do you face as you continue to kind of balance the investment that's happening in the downtown and on the waterfront with the balance of the community?
So the challenges that we face are making sure that the prosperity that is rising in our community reaches all neighborhoods, reaches all sections of our city. We're trying to build a city of opportunity for all people, where no one is left out, where no one is left behind. And I mentioned a couple of the challenges that we face with youth, but a focus on equity, inclusion, and diversity, critically important to us, making sure that resources that are coming into our community are spent in an equitable way and that they reach all sections of the community.
Right. And I've seen your involvement with the Police Athletic League, the investments in the Olmsted Park system, parks across the city. What role do these public spaces and sports play for the children across the city of Buffalo?
Well, first, JJ, let me thank you, Dave Egner, the Wilson Foundation, for the extraordinary commitment that the foundation has made to the city of Buffalo. Over $100 million being spent on parks and trails in the city. Beyond that phenomenal expenditure, during my tenure as mayor, the city has spent over $70 million on parks and playgrounds and youth facilities in the city because we recognize how important sports and recreation and having outdoor facilities are to the development of our young people, to the growth of our young people. So I feel very blessed to be in a city that prioritizes that kind of spending. I've had great partners in the community, the Olmsted Conservancy, our Police Athletic League and Board, the Buffalo City Council, and all levels of government in our community that are all pulling in the same direction and investing in a strategic and smart way to move our community forward.
I'd like to transition a little bit. We talked a little bit about Olmsted and the connectivity that's there in Buffalo, but I'd like to transition to talking a little bit about Southeast Michigan. We saw the regional trail map that's there, and Anita, I think I met you probably 2 or 3 years ago now, and you've been working on this initiative in Southeast Michigan since 1998, I think, as a volunteer.
Yes.
You've put a lot of time and effort into making the Downriver Link Greenways what it is, really sharing the vision, talking about it, and working at the grassroots level. It's seen a lot of momentum as the Iron Belt Trail and the governor's initiative, Governor Snyder's initiative with the Iron Belt Trail, and it became part of that. And I was blown away by one of the meetings we had in our foundation offices where there was 30 or 35 individuals that came into the office to show their support when you presented on the initiative. So I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about the initiative, what it intended to do,
Okay.
and just share your great work.
Great, thank you very much. Downriver Link Greenways Initiative, as JJ indicated, started in 1998, and it was actually the work of our beloved Congressman Dingell. He pulled together a Downriver Summit, basically put all of our stakeholders downriver in a room and said, what can we do to create a better quality of life? And for those in the Parks and Recreation business, we were very excited. Out of that rose are natural resources, because we've got unique geography here in Southeast Michigan. We've got the Detroit River, we're close to Lake Erie, we've got some great water trails. So that kind of moved forward. Within about 3 weeks, we had raised $50,000 grassroots and from our communities, put together a master plan. And our thought process was, let's put a couple trails into the ground and kind of use them, we called them our keystone projects. And the idea was to see if we could really do this kind of grassroots. So 5 communities, 5 funding sources, and that occurred in about 2001. Fast forward to 2019, and we are now 100 miles of trails. But the really cool thing, JJ, is number one is the partnerships and the support that we have downriver, and it's not just, it's just quite honestly, it's just not municipalities, it's nonprofits, it's residents. We've seen a huge economic development in our small business community, and I can share a little bit about that. It's amazing. So.
It truly has been, and for those, I know we don't have the map up, but this connects 21 communities, and it also connects to the anchor asset that we talked about on the riverfront here in Detroit. And it really has been about partnerships, and maybe you could talk a little bit more about the partnership with the health system, with the municipalities, with some of the local businesses, and why it's so important for them.
Our partnerships have been, I think, really unique because they're kind of a layered approach. We, through Downriver Link Greenways, a little bit more history is we just really worked, as you said, as volunteers. Mary Bowling, who is my co-chair, co-president, both of our employers supported this initiative. About 5 years ago, we created a nonprofit, and we used that as a tool to help our communities and other organizations move our initiative forward. And we basically, it was just, quite honestly, neighbors helping neighbors. We put 1 or 2 really good projects in, and basically our residents came to us and said, wow, this is really cool, why aren't we doing this? And the next community said, well, why aren't we doing this? And within the last 5 or 6 years, our tipping point was we had almost 100 miles in, and we had a couple great things happen. First of all, Beaumont Health System, which is a very large health system here in Southeast Michigan, started what they call a Healthy Community Project. And City of Trenton, which kind of sits in the heart of our trail, was selected. And it was selected on their trail system and how they can use their healthy initiatives and trails and combine everything. So that was really great for us. In addition to that, our small business community, a lot of businesses along the trail started realizing how many people were going by on their bicycles and walking, and they'd come in and they'd say, why are all these stores here? You know, what can you do to help support our travels? So we now have businesses that are actually small businesses that are actually locating, and they're calling Downriver Link Greenways, and they're saying, where would be a great place for me to put my business? I want to be on the trail. Some other great partners is Friends of the Detroit River. We partner with a lot of other nonprofits, and it's just been organic, and it's layered. You know, I guess, JJ, I thought a lot about this question, on my ride in this morning, and really, quite honestly, it's just good people doing good work and helping each other. There's really not like a magic bullet that I can say, particularly those in the planning world, that was anything, we've had some great master plans and we did a gap analysis, but it's basically Downriver looking at their story and realizing what a great asset they have, and people, boots on the ground, everyday people just doing their work and moving the story forward.
It's really neat to see where you all started with some of the partnerships, and as we look at different investments, we talk about eliminating gaps in these regional trail systems. You start to see some parallels, and we recently made an announcement on the Genesee Valley Greenway, and the feedback was, well, this has always been envisioned as part of our health needs assessment, and what this could mean for the communities that are along the Greenway. And you hear what you all are doing in the Downriver communities, and Beaumont's commitment as well to support those communities because it's part of their health needs assessment. And we're seeing that same discussion happen with the Empire State Trail. So it's really interesting to see those parallels. And it's not just about eliminating a gap, but it's what it means for the people that live in those communities. One last thing I do want to ask you about is it's not just about the partnerships and eliminating the gap, but you're also sharing this as a story on inviting people from not just those downriver communities, but from around the region to come to the Link Greenway with your Destination Downriver plan. Could you share a little bit about that?
Sure, thank you. Destination Downriver, traditionally, downriver, we've always had a difficult time telling our story. We've got a very active Southern Wayne County Regional Chamber, and tourism has never been kind of high on our list. And rightly so, very economic development driven. And as a result of all the trails and all the infrastructure and all the program, we've had grassroots programming going on all the time. A group of us, like-minded organizations and individuals, came together. It's basically, how do we tell our story? How do we tell the world what a great place that we live in, and how do we encourage people to come and visit us? So out of that came Destination Downriver, and we started a coalition. We've been in existence going on about a year and a half now. And the idea of the coalition is to put like-minded organizations, individuals in the room, and help us solve that challenge of how we tell the world. So we are now in the process of creating some videos. We've got all of our mayors on board. We're working very closely with the Detroit Convention Visitors Bureau, and very excited. We've created a logo. They have supported our initiative. In fact, it's Go Time Detroit. It's also going to be Destination Downriver, Give It a Go. So it's been, very good. And just, again, I guess words of advice or words that I would say is that when you take these things on, you're not necessarily there to solve it all, because if you think about it, 100 miles of trails, tourism and all, it's daunting. It's just little increment steps of finding the right people in the right room that are excited and got the vision, and giving them the right tools, to move things forward.
Well, I'd like to transition back to Southeast Michigan and Arn, your team. I mean, a lot of exciting news over the last couple of years with the team coming back to the city of Detroit in Little Caesars Arena, and it's been great. I've brought my kids down to several games. The energy that's in the stadium has been great. But you're also making that significant commitment in the community across the region and across the city. Could you share a little bit about that vision and kind of what the interest was with Palace Sports and with the Pistons in making that commitment?
Well, it started with the move, or our decision to move back to Detroit. I mean, I've been here now 4 years this month. I moved from Los Angeles to Detroit. And really, the first observation was an NBA team has to be in the city. It can't be in the suburbs. And when we had to play a role in Detroit's revitalization. and it was critical to our mission. And when we made the decision to move, in talking to the mayor and the city leaders, we made a decision to be all in on Detroit in every way. And so the second part of it, of the decision, was to move our headquarters so our basketball team would practice every day and our business offices would be in the heart of Detroit. So that building, in partnership with Henry Ford Health System, will open sometime this fall, hopefully next month. Hopefully it's on budget, on time. And we're very excited about that. And that building is unique. Our practice facility was designed in a way that wasn't going to be a fortress. Most practice facilities for professional sports teams are walled off from the community. The vision of our practice facility and headquarters was to be connected to the community and make it part of the community. There's no walls, there's no fences, it's right there. And to use our facility not just for the Pistons, but for the community, for camps and clinics. So that's one piece. The second piece of the move was, in our discussions with the city, was how can we improve and participate in what's happening in Detroit to make it better for all of its citizens. And the mayor suggested to me, and early on in our negotiations, that he wanted us to rehab 60 basketball courts. And we had a long debate about this, because my view was basketball is played indoors and we should do it indoor courts. But he really was committed to, when we talked about Detroit, there is a business, and I think the mayor hit it on it very well, it's really to make it all-inclusive. There's really no recovery in Detroit unless you touch the neighborhoods and you reach all the children, improving the schools. And really what part of our mission is to improve the lives of young people in Detroit and creating partnerships with other organizations like the Ralph Wilson Organization where we can create positive change. So we decided to accept the mayor's challenge and rehab 60 courts. And once we started to do that, we realized it's not enough just to do courts. If we're really going to revitalize these parks, we have to create other infrastructure. That's what we're talking with the Wilson Foundation about, providing greater infrastructure. So it's not just basketball, but whether it's playgrounds or other facilities so the community can use them. And two, where we can help is to program the courts. So we started programming the courts this summer. So it's not just basketball and clinics and camps, which we do well, but it's providing yoga and physical training for the community. And I think you said it in the earlier panel, it's listening to the community. We met with the community leaders as we did these parks and getting their input, what they want. Mm-hmm. So to make them feel ownership here. It's not just us doing it. And that to me has been the greatest thing for me really in the 4 years. While we want to win games, and we're trying, and I think our team is getting better, the most gratifying part of the job for me is the many friendships and the partnerships we've created, because you can't do it alone. We can do some parts well, like provide basketball and knowledge that we have in our areas, but Detroit is blessed with many great foundations, starting with the Ralph Wilson Foundation, and partnering with, whether it's with foundations or other businesses, or a hospital like Henry Ford, where together we can do much more for the community and serve the community and its needs.
You're doing an amazing job, and one thing that struck me when we were backstage, you talked a little bit about, we were talking about sports specialization at a young age, and you got to the conversation about, it's not just about basketball and some of these investments, some of the courts, they're multi-sport courts. Can you talk a little bit about the importance of that diversity of play for kids and how this investment can spur that as well?
Well, my experience, first off, as a player agent, all my players would tell you, if they were interviewed here today, that the best athletes play multi-sports growing up. They don't specialize really till they get to 9th or 10th grade. They grow up playing basketball and football or soccer or baseball or running track or other things, that they felt that having a multi-layered experience gives them a much more, they don't get burned out, they have fun, they learn different techniques and aspects which they can incorporate ultimately in the sport they ultimately specialize in. And so whether it's Kobe Bryant or Tracy McGrady or Nomar Garcia-Parra or Jason Giambi, they would all tell you if they were here that they played multi-sports throughout their life and that it helped them. And for us, we realized basketball is the hook. It's the foundation. The courts were important to the city, and it's an attempt to revitalize the park and make them look nice. And, but really for people of all ages, young people, there may be a playground set, maybe chessboards. It could be a variety of activities. It could be, having soccer fields. We want to make this all-inclusive, and we want to serve the neighborhood. And it's not just to have a basketball court and just have a few kids play basketball. It's a way just to bring them in and then hopefully open their eyes to many other activities that can be at these parks and really bring life to these parks.
You're doing amazing work. As I'm sitting up here, and I hope you all see it too, we've got a professional sports team, and we heard earlier about what they're doing in Barcelona. Mayor Brown leading the city of Buffalo, and then a community effort that's grown over the last 20 years. And what has struck me is, one thing that we talk about a lot is collaboration. Each of you have talked about that. So I want to go back across the panel and leave this for each of you to answer, is what does that mean to you, and why is it so important to make a difference in the community?
Well, starting with the Pistons and our owner, Tom Goris, we really believe that the team is a community asset, and that our mission really is to create partnerships that will bring positive change, improve the lives of young people in the city. And that really is our goal. And really, we can't do it alone. We realized that very early on. We have a great platform. We can bring our assets and resources to the table, but we need to work with great partners like the Wilson Foundation and like Henry Ford Health System, and our two great examples, where together we've been able to achieve a lot more. So we can bring some basketball expertise. Wilson Foundation provides strategic overlay about what works, what doesn't work, and then working clearly with the city and with civic leaders, we can all together work and create something that's going to be really meaningful and lasting and make a real difference in this community and help it really recover and really, to me, bring long-lasting change to this community in a positive way.
Absolutely. Mr. Mayor?
That point is powerful. I don't think there's any organization that can do it alone. I know that in governments all across the country, in most cases, there's just not enough resources to do everything that needs to be done to invest in parks and recreation the way we would like to. So we have to collaborate and partner with organizations like the Wilson Foundation, the Police Athletic League, the Community Foundation for Greater Buffalo, county government, state government, the private sector. That collaboration is critically important. The collaboration with citizens. We want the investments that we are making in parks and playgrounds and recreation facilities to be citizen-driven. We want to really hear the youth voice, the family voice, the senior voice. That engagement of the community makes for better projects, and it helps to inform how the city spends money, how the city partners with other entities, and at the end of the day, it produces a better product for creating good quality of life in our community and other communities.
And I just want to pause and make a comment there. As we've worked in the city of Buffalo, and we've collaborated on a couple of initiatives. You and your team, I mean, it's not just words. It's real, and you've challenged our organization and other organizations in the community to listen even more. And I just want to take my hat off to that initiative. It's not just putting those words out there. You all are doing that every day. Anita,
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. It's almost like when I say my remarks, it's like we rehearsed them. It's a great segue because, again, my part of this panel is more of the grassroots. And your question, JJ, is kind of why and what drives us. And quite honestly, at the end of the day, our parks and recreation and our trails are kind of our quality of life, and our jobs come and go. Our life's journey come and go, but at the end of the day, being out in nature and sitting, to me, is what transcends all of our conversation, all the great partners. But at the end of the day, I guess what drives us is seeing, somebody sitting in a park. And we say this often on the water trail is, let's at least get people to the river, you know, and it doesn't have to be a grandiose, very expensive kayak launch. Let's just put a park bench, as simple as a park bench, and let people relax. So that's, I guess, really what drives Downriver Link Greenways, is at the end of the day, that vision of people walking along the trail, the grassroots people, of getting everybody to our trails and outdoors, and it transcends our whole life journey, is being outside on trails. So, yeah.
Just to follow on, collaboration can help us with, working together can get at that culture change. But one thing that is always in the back of my mind when we talk about these capital investments, how do we make sure that they're sustainable for the future, for future generations as we talk about this culture change? So I just want to leave that question, and Arn or the mayor, how do you view this as you're making these changes in the community? How do you ensure that they're sustainable and they're there for generations to come?
Sustainability is critically important. You have to plan for the sustainability of assets that you invest in. I know with the Wilson Foundation and the investment that you're making in Ralph C. Wilson Jr. Centennial Park, we talked a lot about sustainability and what it would cost to sustain that facility for generations to come. We were able to build that in to the funding model. We do that with a lot of the investments that we make in the city in sports facilities and recreational facilities. We build in sustainability. We plan for sustainability. The last thing you want is to build out something that's important to the community, and 2 years later, 5 years later, 10 years later, see that thing that the community was so proud of, that the community is utilizing and enjoying, fall into a state of disrepair. So I think as we think about all of these investments in sports and recreational facilities, sustainability has to be an important part of the conversation.
And just to turn that question just a little bit for you, Arn, as you look at your commitment to build these courts, and you talked about the programmatic elements, and I know Police Athletic League and the other community entities in Buffalo are doing the same, how do you look at your commitment to ensure that sustainability and really be that true partner with the city?
Well, I think it's a combination of when we came downtown, or when we had our discussions, working with the mayor. It's not just us. That was an important part of our discussion. How are we going to keep these vital and in good shape, and so that the community can enjoy it? And really, that was part of our deal with the city, that we would both make sure that these would stay in great shape going forward. So again, we couldn't do it alone. We needed their help. We need to make them safe. It's not just keeping them in good shape, but also keeping them safe so children can feel that they can come in any time of the day, or mothers can take their kids to the parks at any time of the day. So that was one thing that we negotiated heavily, was to make sure that they would stay, that we would have the city's help and cooperation in maintaining these courts. And two, I would just want to add, in the times that we live, I think it's so important now, because sports is, I think what we're all saying, and I'm sure all the other panels, sports is a unifying force. In our society today, there are so many problems, and it is so divisive, and what we don't want is tribalism. We want to bring people together and unify our country and unify our communities, and sports has an important role. And I think that's what the Wilson Foundation recognizes, and all the participants on these panels probably have spoken about. And it is vital that we all in every way that we can make an effort to help bring people together in this community and stop gun violence and stop the things that are pulling us apart and bring us together. And this is a very important point.
I 100% agree, and it was almost right on cue, because now it's time for the question and answer session, so thank you for that. So I'd invite everyone to send us some questions for the panel, and I have a couple that have already been teed up here. Let's start with the first one, and this is probably for Anita. Why are trails and greenways important for the success of parks, public spaces, and play in general, especially areas that have been developed in car-centric ways?
First of all, trails, at least in Downriver, they are easily accessible. They go through neighborhoods, and you, quite honestly, just walking and running and playing, you don't have to necessarily even be in organized sports. You can just enjoy outside natures, and it's not a huge investment getting the infrastructure in. But again, kind of going back to my comments is, trails can transverse and transcend any type of outdoor recreation, sport, activity. From walking to playing and fun runs and with not a big investment.
Anything to add?
Yeah, I think Anita said it well. Trails, again, are unifying. They bring people together. They are investments that are more passive. So you can walk, you can run, you can ride. I know that on an old rail line in the city of Buffalo, residents of our community campaigned for us to put in a trail where people could walk, where they could walk their dogs, where they could bicycle ride. And it is one of the most well-used areas in our community, and it actually brings people not just from that neighboring community, but from across the entire region to use that facility. So it really has a unifying effect. It is passive. It doesn't have to be programmed, and people can make their own fun.
And I think, Mayor, a good point that I think is worthy to bring up is also the non-motorized transportation aspect. I mean, transportation, our trails as a transportation facility is also important. I know particularly in Flat Rock, which is one of our keystone, I was recreation director at the time. We actually built the community center based on the trails. Trails was going in first, part of that Downriver Summit. Flat Rock offered to be one of the keystone projects, and when the time came for us to put in our other recreation facilities, we actually built everything around that trail system. So now we have kids that are using their bicycle, and families. We've started a great program. We now do a youth triathlon, and the kids are actually riding their bikes to get to the triathlon. So they use the pool that we build in the community center, but it's a non-motorized is really a very key sports and programming and outdoor recreation, but non-transportation really needs to be a strong part of the conversation. It helps us get our people to where.
It's really interesting to look at how some of these regional trails and even some of the connectors to those regional trails connect those anchor assets, whether it be a school or a community center or an economic development node, but it does provide that other option that can be non-car centric. We have time for one last question. Where do we start in our communities gaining attention and support for these kinds of initiatives, especially in places which may not think these public uses of space are important or good?
I will say that many times these considerations are citizen-driven, they're resident-driven. They're people informing government, informing the private sector, informing the foundation community about what they would like to see. And I think it's important for government, it's important for the private sector, the foundations, to listen to the voices of the people. In Buffalo, we built a skate park because we met with youth in the community that said there was no skate park in the city of Buffalo. We were able to build that out. We have a growing immigrant and refugee community. They said they wanted to play cricket, so we're building a cricket field in the city of Buffalo now. So I think citizen engagement and listening to the public can drive a lot of these projects in a very positive way.
And I think, JJ, too, going back to an earlier comment that I made, is they don't always have to be big projects, large financial commitments. You know, putting a couple park benches in a park and encouraging people to walk, maybe do a reading program, start a small little fun run in a community, and just getting people engaged, and then it just kind of migrates, and people realize, oh, we could do this. I see what's going on in, Southeast Michigan a little further. We could do that. So getting people really engaged, small grassroots.
And I think that's a perfect way to end the panel. It's to think small, to make a big impact, and really appreciate all the work that you all are doing in each of your communities to make an impact for the community. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.